When I was 8 years old, I was working for John F. Kennedy's election. I was in charge of 2 precincts because we lived in a heavily Republican area. And my goal was to make the world a better place. That was my goal. And at that age, I decided I needed 3 skills: how to understand laws, make laws, money, and people. So I became a lawyer, CPA, and a social worker. And I started running campaigns.
At 8?
When I got a little bit older, after I finished all those things. And then I found that my goal to make the world a better place was strange, because as a lawyer, my goal was to win for my client. As CPA, to make sure I did a good job for my clients. And I started to lose who I was. So I went to rabbinic school primarily to figure out who I wanted to be and what my values were. So there's an old joke, which is if I got a call to be religious, it was a collect call, because it was very expensive, but it really was to help me readjust my vision and who I wanted to be. That's why I went to rabbinic school. Well, I don't try and separate my role as rabbi versus a human being. So I'm kind of all that at the same time. And I work in many areas with lawyers, CPAs, workplace, and so forth. So I would define it pretty much what Patricia did, but I would add that it's about understanding that every moment has opportunities to make judgments or not make judgments, to see the world as a place of blessings or of fear, and that I choose how to see that. So what I try and do is at every moment see an individual as someone who can teach me something rather than someone to try and control or compete with, to see any event that I'm involved in as no matter how bad it is, how do I look for the blessings in that event? So it helps me whether I'm a rabbi or not. And I do teach those things, but I think one teaches more by how they act than by just by words. I think teaching by example is how we really teach, not just by our words. So I try and do it on a regular basis. And I'm often successful and often not.
Thank you.
So first of all, the Kabbalah itself does not exist. There's no book called the Kabbalah.
Okay.
Lekabel, the Hebrew word, means to receive. So it's part of our spiritual tradition. There are many different books and also different paths. And every Kabbalist thinks they have the right path. So often we argue. There are some who wish to see Kabbalah or mysticism as a way to control reality. That's not how I see it. There are some who want to study Kabbalah or mysticism to have this one-to-one encounter with God. And while that's important, that can become very addictive. I want to have that spiritual high. It's a very personal one. I want us to use that to help make the world a better place. That's my ultimate goal. So it's to take the moment. In fact, it's like your concept of consciousness. It's to take how I walk through life and make it much more conscious. That I'm not here to make a lot of money, though money is important. I'm not here to control others, though power is important within reason. I'm here to understand that I'm to grow in that experience and help others grow. So mystical traditions are about, one, telling me that there are 4 worlds that coexist. So there's this world of reality, physical world, and the other 3 worlds above are less physical, much more spiritual. Mm-hmm. And they exist at the exact same time, and I'm part of those worlds at the exact same time. Mm-hmm. So we are conscious beings, much more spiritual than we are physical. As this table is much more full of air than it is physical, we are much more spiritual, but we forget that. Mm-hmm. So I want people to remember what they're doing, and that there are different energies, and how we look at those energies. For instance, when someone is raped, God forbid, and they are in a trauma where they constantly feel that sense of being violated, mm-hmm. how do we move them to a place where, yes, it did happen, but does not define who you are? Mm-hmm. And our tradition, the mystical Kabbalistic tradition, talks about Chokhmah and Binah. Chokhmah, everything's coming at you, and you can't separate it. Binah is where you take that and you try and now put it into categories. Yes, that did happen to me, but it's not happening now. Mm-hmm. And so we have different ways of balancing how people act. And so Kabbalah, the study of it, for me, is about how do I walk through this life, see that it's real, it's important, and see the, if you will, the miracles all around me at all times. But I must choose to look for those angels and those miracles. Mm-hmm. Well, let's go back to Napoleon Bonaparte III. Prior to Napoleon in Europe, everyone got their rights based on their religion. So you really didn't have a choice, because there was no place you could go if you kind of left your religious tradition. True with Jews as well. Napoleon comes along, Enlightenment, everyone now got rights as French people, but not as their religious tradition. They had choice. So we are all right now, compared to what our ancestors were, we're all Catholics by choice or Jews by choice. We have that choice. And a lot of people may opt out. There are a lot of Catholics who no longer practice Catholicism, Jews, Buddhists, others. So everyone has that. On the other hand, children obviously want to follow what their parents did. At least they're good things. And very often, they pick their religion based on their particular parents' choice. Now, I love different religious traditions. My book, Rabbi Wore Moccasins, based, I worked with Native Americans and learned about their traditions. It was an amazing journey. I've worked with evangelicals, I worked with Catholics, I worked with Muslims, and I learned from those traditions. So the answer I would say to you is clearly I'm raised in a family environment. And being Jewish is not just a religion, it's more like a tribe, because you really kind of belong. You can be an atheist and be Jewish. I think it's hard to be an evangelical and be atheist. But you can within a Jewish tradition, because you're kind of more like a tribal system. But I did study other religious traditions, and I honor those. I do not believe that God only likes red roses. I don't think God only likes one religion. I think there are different religious paths to God, so I honor different religious traditions. But my family tradition feels the most safe for me, the most comfortable, and it makes sense. Can I argue and debate with it? Absolutely. But I like being Jewish. I'm actually really proud I'm Jewish. But I also honor people who are Catholics, who are Muslims. It's as long as they take it in a very sincere way and don't use it to try to impose it upon others. That's when I get a little bit upset. But if that's their journey, and it's to God, and to try to make the world a better place, I'm excited. I like that. We have three basic movements. I would say that the Orthodox is more strict. The conservative is more in the middle, and Reform is less strict. So the fact that I was in a town growing up where there may be a few Jewish families in the whole town, it wasn't exactly strict. In other words, we could do things, and our family made certain decisions. We decided not to eat non-kosher meat. We decided to do certain things. But it wasn't as strict as I think your experience was growing up as a Catholic. There wasn't a catechism. So for instance, on the Bible, was the Bible written by God, as an example? Orthodox Christian would say yes. Conservative would say, we're getting there, we're not sure. Yes, but Reform says primarily no. It was written by people who wanted to experience God using their own experience, and much of that was divine. But they also brought in their own biases, such as towards gays and lesbians.
Right.
Hence the Reform movement's the first one that had no problems. It took a while. But now we have gay and lesbian synagogues, not a major problem. Same went to first ordained women. And so we argue, but we argue out of love to understand our tradition.
For you.
Actually, when I was studying to become a rabbi, we were told not to study Kabbalah. And so if someone tells me no, I go, why not?
Such a rebel.
And because the Reform movement for a long time was based on being rational. And mysticism, these things aren't rational, except they really are. And so it didn't make sense. In addition, I wanted something deeper than just the dogma, deeper than just these are the rules. And too many experiences suggested to me that there's other realities happening. And when I looked for more, I found more, as if the world opened up when you looked for it. If I want to look for connections and gave my prayer to the world, suddenly those things happened. So I wanted more. I wanted to understand more. And that's when, basically, it was during rabbinic school. Well, first of all, I am a little bit worried about that question, because it starts to say we're better than somebody else.
I said different, not better.
I understand. But a lot of times people say that the Jewish people are the chosen people. There's a Jewish joke that responds to that, which is, after everything we've gone through, God, please choose somebody else.
Right. I appreciate that one. Yes.
And also, I don't want to compare to say that we are better. And I'm just being very careful about that, because I really honor other traditions.
Yes.
Some aspects that I really love about Judaism include the following. One, and by the way, We have Reform, Orthodox, Conservative, and we'll have different views. So whatever I say, another rabbi could give you a different view.
Understood.
So let me first take about talking to God. I like the fact that the word rabbi means teacher, not minister, not priest. You do not go through your rabbi to get to God. Matter of fact, anyone who has knowledge can lead a service, can do a wedding, can do a funeral. So that's why my primary goal is to teach and empower others. So therefore, the hierarchy is not there. So I like that. I like the fact that most of us, we question who wrote the Torah, and that gives us the freedom, again, to support gay and lesbian rights, women's rights. I think that is amazing, and I love that part as well. We're not stuck in the dogma. Now, the Orthodox may have other issues, but not where we come from. I also like some of our traditions about sin. We don't really use the word sin in the way it's used in other traditions. It's not this terrible thing. The actual interpretation of the word chet is that you missed the mark. Very different concept. So please get back on.
That's what sin means in archery.
Means.
Literally, archery.
Yes.
It's an archery
To
term.
miss the mark, to be without.
But it's not about you're bad. It's not about all these judgment things, all this guilt stuff. I mean, we do have guilt, I understand that, but it's not the major thing. And then it gives us tools like when I'm in a conflict with someone, and you may ask this later on, but when I was addressing the young man who killed my son, and the normal reaction is revenge or anger, I really did not have that. Sorrow and loss tremendously. But I said to him in the courtroom, I go, I want you to have a good life, but I cannot forgive you today. I can't forgive you if you make a journey. And I gave him the 4 steps of our journey called teshuvah, repentance. And it's what I use for conflict resolution all the time when I work with lawyers or CPAs or others. The first step is an apology, where you actually say you're sorry without saying, I'm sorry, but. It means I'm really sorry. You take ownership for what you did, responsibility. 2 is to understand the extent of what you did. So I told him, I want you to listen to the funeral to understand what soul you destroyed. And then 3, you have to make restitution. And I said, any jail time or any financial restitution, that's separate. What I need for you, is that you silenced a voice. So you must find a way to give voice to the voice that you silenced. We have our fund. That's our way of doing it. You must find a way. And then 4, given the exact same circumstances, you will not drink and drive as you did. When you do those 4 steps, we will talk, and I'll be there for you. And so my tradition has helped me with these very difficult types of experiences. So I love our tradition. That's how I want to move through the world. By the way, I'd love that to happen with Israelis and Palestinians. Those 4 steps would be very good. And I'd like to do those someday. And then I talk about dealing with difficult people. When you have someone you don't like, you get all upset and so forth. How about if you look at them as maybe someone to bring you a message that you need to hear? And you move from a place of judgment and fear to a place of curiosity.
And gratitude.
And gratitude. The need to reconcile. And what we have done as a fund is we've created dialogue between Israelis and Palestinians. And we got that from our son Avi. He was only a freshman at Brown. And there was a Palestinian from Ramallah who hated Israelis. And it took a while, but they actually became friends. They disagreed, but they became friends. And during this time, we've been calling him to make sure he's okay. And actually, there were some problems that we helped him out with. So I see these groups. Beyond what we do, there's a group that we should never belong to. Strange group. It's only made up of parents who have lost children to the other side. So it's Israeli parents who have lost children because of a terrorist. It is Palestinian parents who have lost children because of an Israeli soldier. And these parents work together to understand each other, and they've called for peace. And they've called for people to be aware of each other and each other's stories. And there are not just one, but there's several groups that actually do that. What I think has happened, simplistically, but also very carefully by both sides, is they ignore the presence of the other. So it's mutual blindness. So the Israelis, as an example, while they know that they're Palestinians, they don't really understand by and large their view, their perspective, their story, their pain. Same thing with Palestinians. Most only see Israelis as soldiers or settlers. They don't see what their joy is. Until you see someone's joy, you really don't know them. My old statement is, an enemy is someone whose story you've not yet heard. So I think consciousness happens when we start to hear stories. But stories not as weapons. Sometimes we weaponize history and stories to show the other side's bad and we're good. You play that game, then we continue this whole thing. We have to break that down and create more stories of empathy and sympathy. And that's what we do, and that's what we think a lot of other groups will be doing. So that's a piece, important piece. And I want to say there's some Palestinians, Mahmoud Abbas as an example, who has expressed compassion and sympathy in a way that I did not expect. I think there's a voice there, and many other moderate voices. I've heard those from Israelis. There are those voices. We need to amplify those voices. What Lyndon Johnson once asked someone working at the Kennedy Center, who was cleaning the bathroom, "What are you doing?" And the guy responded, "I'm helping to launch our mission to Mars." And he's correct. And he was able to see that bigger picture. So in that article, I talk about that. I talk about making sure people see the bigger picture and that you have to honor them and help them see that. Because that's actually a very spiritual piece to it, which is that each of us contribute to the well-being of others and to the overall well-being of this planet. And it's not just, oh, you do this, you do that, you're a cog. Because then I feel like a cog. I want us to feel much, much broader. I talk about in that article, which I mentioned before, how to see each person you come in contact with as someone who has something to teach you about who you're becoming. And move from trying to judge or control, which a lot of managers think they have to control, or a lot of others who dislike people try and get away from that person. And that doesn't help anybody. And so on your better days, I'm not trying to say all the time, on your better days, I want you to see that person, someone who has something to teach you, and go in there with a sense of curiosity. And your energy will change, and just maybe, you can't control them, but I've seen it where if your energy changes, they feel that as well. So I'm trying to empower employees to help make the experience one where they are living a much more conscious life. I use the word spiritual because conscious is one that most people don't fully understand.
Right.
Spiritual, they understand the word. They have no idea what it means, by the way, because everyone has different definitions.
Right.
Exactly.
That word is so far more acceptable. But that's what I'm trying to do in the workplace. I cannot give you a definitive answer, but I think it's a choice. I can choose to see God only on my side. Yay, God, for my religion. And God will take care of me and everybody else is an infidel or whatever term I want to use.
They're on their own.
They're on their own. Right. I can see God as only up there. I can see God as a clockmaker who made the clocks, us, and then walked away. Let's do what we want to do. So I need to choose for me a position that adds meaning to my life. Therefore, if I choose to see God in each person as a spiritual being, if I choose to see every event as having some part of divinity in it, my treatment of animals or the earth, then I think I live a richer life. So I have said, for me, the answer is yes, because I think it adds more meaning to my life. And if I'm wrong,
Right.
Because I'm not living this life to get a ticket to get to the afterlife.
Right.
I don't believe in that.
Yeah.
I live this life to make this life meaningful for me. And when I die, God will take care of me. That's my basic view. Yes. And that's why, of all the parts of the Torah that there are out there, a lot of parts, the one with the most commentaries is that one. The rabbis have problems with it. Major problems with it. Major problems with it. So the group of rabbis that I like say the following. This was a test of Abraham, and Abraham failed it. Abraham should have said to God, over my dead body, would I let you kill him? Would I kill my son? That's what Abraham should have said. And God said, okay, you really want to see? I want to see if you really go through with it. And when Abraham's about to, God says, no, I'm not going to let you do that. I'm stopping you. And that's where the angel comes out. So I think Abraham blew it. Now Rabbi Woody Allen says it better. That story only proves that someone with a strong, deep voice can get people to do the stupidest things.
Yeah.
And so,
right on.
So when I teach that one every year, I say this is a story for me of the dangers of being a fundamentalist. The dangers of saying that you know what God wants. How dare you say that? And that gives you the right to kill others. To say right now, if you're a Christian, I can kill you. To say if you are whatever other religion I don't like, I can kill you. No. God wants to reaffirm life. I think you are correct. Totally. I'm going to ask you to visit my campus, Loyola Marymount University. The university made a garden of peace in the campus for my son Avi. He wasn't a student there. And we picked out quotes from different religious traditions to put on stones. It's a great place to meditate. You should come to the garden. One of my favorite ones, based on what we've been talking about, is by Rumi, Islamic tradition. Beyond rightness and wrongness, there's a field where I will meet you. We need to find those fields to meet each other.